Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located on the good earth. It is time for another PulseWave report with yours truly, Dex the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports. And if you go to PulseWaveTrading.com, you will see that we have amazing quarantine deal specials going on. You can break bread with us. Come learn how we do this. And guess what? You're just in time for the new algo update, which is doing incredible things. And I have another update running as we speak. So this weekend's reports are going to be straight up lit. Straight up lit. And I'm really excited about what's going on here in the near future, how things have been moving. I'm here to let you know that regardless of what the economy is doing or doesn't do, regardless of stimulus and no stimulus, regardless of COVID vaccines and no COVID vaccines, it don't mean a hill of beans. All right, because you got the PulseWave report, and that's all you need is the PulseWave report. Everything else is foolishness. You don't need the foolishness in your life. That's why you got to get right and give it them PulseWaves, man. All right, so you can know what's going on, so you can know what time it is. There's nothing else like the PulseWave report on the planet. I will put up our track record against any other track record out there, our system, our methodology for trade management, how to manage your open positions, legging in and out of positions. I will put our methodology against any methodology out there any day of the week because we have the goods. It's all about that bag. All right, I teach you how to get that bag. Come on over and let's break some bread. All right, so today's Take Back Friday, right? So on Take Back Friday, I normally will not initiate new positions. It just depends on what's happening in the market, because primarily if a market's been rallying all week, then it's going to pull back on Friday due to profit taking. If it's been like crashing all week, then it'll correct and have a little rally on Friday due to profit taking. That's the normal cycle of markets. But the times that we are in is not normal. It's anything but normal. So anything goes. Markets tend to do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and they are extremely news sensitive. That's right. They move and ebb and flow with every piece of news coming out right now. So with that being said, this is what it is. There's nothing that you can do to control that. The only thing you can do is learn how to move within it. And that's what I teach you how to do at PulseWave Trading. I show you how you can move with that in spite of that, so it doesn't hold you down. All right, so there's a lot going on. There's issues with the Fed. What can the Fed do? The market is reliant on stimulus. All right, the Fed thinks that it's time to start weaning the American people and the market off of the stimulus. But here's the issue. They don't want to give it to you. All right, they want to try to wean you off the medication. All right, they want to wean you off of the opioid stimulus. All right, they're saying no more opioid stimulus. All right, that's what they're trying to do to you. But see, I have a better stimulus. It's called the PulseWave report. Because if you trade with the PulseWave report, you capture moves, man, in these markets, like the Ethereum soaring above $500 for the first time since 2018. If you are a subscriber, you could have been in a position to capture all of that. Not some of it, but all of that. Because that's just how we move over here. So where do we go from here? I haven't the foggiest idea. That's what my mom used to say sometimes. I haven't the foggiest idea. I really don't know. I really don't know. But I will tell you this. I'll tell you what I do know. Let's talk on what I do know. I do know that your boy Biden is a war hawk. Your boy Biden could very well bring us into World War III. He's all about bombing. He is a war hawk. All right. He is in the pocket of the military industrial complex. And you need to know and understand that. All right. So they used you. They made you think that this big communist socialist takeover was coming. They don't give a darn about that. And they don't give a darn about you, the people. All right. They don't care. They care about power, baby. It's all about that power. That's all they care about, and that's all they are about. If it ain't about power, then it ain't about nothing. They're not talking about nothing, and they don't have nothing to say to you. And that's just how our government rolls. And I think the sooner we wrap our heads around that and understand that, I think the better off we're going to be. Because right now, people think that the government cares about them and that the government cannot wait to take care of you. That's what you think. You think that the market was designed for you, which it was not. But let's be honest, that is what you think. That is what you think. And the sooner you realize that it was not, then the sooner you'll be able to move on with your life. Because unfortunately, it was not. And they don't like you playing in their backyard. But do I care? Of course not. I play in their backyard anyway, and I teach you guys how to do the same thing. So we don't really care how they feel about things. We don't care. We're gonna make it do what it do regardless. And that's the one thing that they don't like. They don't like us doing that. They don't. And if they have anything to do about it, then they're gonna make sure that we can no longer play in their sandbox. How do they do that? Well, they deceive you, ladies and gentlemen. They deceive you. It's what they do. It's how they live their life. All right. Their life is built and based on deception. They don't care. All right. They don't care. And you need to understand that. I think Michael Jackson said it best. They don't care about us. He was telling you the truth. They don't. They don't care about you. They could give a darn about you. Whether you lived or whether you died, your government does not love you. Okay? They don't love you. If they loved you, then why, oh why, would they have been doing all they can to deceive you? Why do they do things behind the scenes that you and I are not privy to? What's up with that? For instance, while Joe Biden apparently won this so-called election, if that's what you want to call it, the entire process was dominated by COVID precautions and distortions. Nearly 80% of Joe Biden's vote, according to the exit polls, named COVID as the key issue. A similar 80% of Trump's vote saw the economy as the key issue. Now, in the name of COVID fears, Election Day was essentially canceled, and more than half the votes were cast by mail, many of them weeks before the election. Now, while the Democrats leading the push for early mail-in voting, people who feared to go to the polls because of COVID were overwhelmingly Biden voters. Once again, those people who were shook, who were frightened to go outside and go to the voting polls, those primarily were voting for Biden. Now, Republicans across the country allowed the Democrats to intimidate voters with COVID myths and then use the myths as a pretext for voting by mail from home. That's right. You allowed this, Republicans, on your watch. Now, on the assumption that it was perilous to vote in person, mail-in ballots were authorized everywhere. More than 100 million votes were mailed in. Are you getting the trend, the unison? All right, this is something that was authorized everywhere, just like the initial shutdowns. Every country on the face of the earth just about said, yeah, let's lock down together in unison. Now, breaking the links between personal presence, IDs, signatures, ballots, and individual voters, the new procedures fostered a very murky and error-prone system that should not be repeated, but I'm sure it's going to be. You see, the mail-in operations prolonged the voting period and changed the electoral dynamic. We can only hope that the American future was not lost in the mail. But I'm here to tell you that it was more than lost in the mail. It was intercepted. The mail was intercepted. So here's the myth and the mantra of this so-called COVID that you need to be aware of moving forward. Because it's looking like no matter what Trump does, they got the whole system locked down. They got the courts locked down, even the Supreme Court locked down. No matter what, he is going to come out the loser at the end of this. All right. He just doesn't know it and realize it yet, but the deck has been stacked against Trump. Now, the ruling theme of the campaign was the myth and the mantra of 220,000 COVID deaths. Now, this claim, the medical community is all behind. You got to understand that, including working with the CDC. So this claim the media inoculated and propagated relentlessly, and even Trump disastrously seemed to condone. The electoral campaigns pivoted on the myth of the 220,000 or more deaths. Now, actual COVID caused deaths were less than 10% of this number, and the average age of deaths was higher than the average age of all cause deaths. Measured by years of lost life, COVID was insignificant compared to ordinary flu, pneumonia, TB, or other diseases. Now, the chief significance of COVID were the political lockdowns, quarantines of the healthy, which has never been done before in history, and neglect of the sick in the name of reserving healthcare resources for COVID. Now, a notable majority of so-called COVID deaths occurred in nursing homes and assisted living facilities where the average stay is around 5 months. Unlike the flu, measles, or other diseases which kill millions of who? Young people. COVID chiefly kills people already in the process of dying. Now, in reality, our bodies' biomes are full of viruses, mostly innocuous or neutralized by the immune system, and many of them are coronaviruses associated with the common cold. But no. The CDC classified anyone who died with a positive COVID test as a COVID death, even though this all these tests give you false positives. Doesn't matter. Now, depending on how many actual infections there were, false positives were frequent. We can agree on that. Now, a test that harbored 1% false positives, the lowest estimate, will produce 50% false results in the case of an infection rate of 2%. You just can't trust those numbers. But as Mark Twain wrote, it is easier to fool the people than to convince them they have been fooled. Did you catch that? Did you get that? Mark Twain was pretty deep, wasn't he? And he was right. This principle applies overwhelmingly to politicians. Once they have made a mistake, it is nearly impossible for them to admit error. It is far more popular to double down on the error than to retract it. Now, American democracy is now fraught with pernicious myths. Under the Democrats, it suffers from an electoral process devoted both to a myth of a pandemic and to an economic program devoted to a green religious cult. On the Republican side, the administration has enlisted in a misguided campaign based on the myth of the trade gap. Now, Democrats propose to replace this myth with the myth of CO2 pollution in a futile battle against the climate change that voters rank near the bottom of their list of priorities. For investors, the climate change paradigm means a massive national program of subsidies for a feckless transformation of our energy economy from a robust and functional system to a vulnerable, volatile, and vain apparatus marked by windfall totem poles and pervasive sun hinges. Don't forget, this is all backed by very deep pockets. The reason why they want to push it is because they're going to get broke the heck off. Trust and believe this. If you follow the money, you will realize why this is such a big deal. A lot of pockets are standing by to profit largely in this Green New Deal. It's called the Green New Deal because those behind the scheme are going to be laced with the most green. The Green New Deal puts no green in your pocket or my pocket. It only puts it in the pocket of the politician and those corporations and companies that are said to become trillionaire companies. All right, understand that. Now, our meager national savings are going to be dissipated, and our scarce resource of arable land will be wasted in a campaign against CO2, a benign elixir of life. You need CO2, it's part of life. How are you going to try to legislate life? They want to legislate the air. That's basically what it comes down to. So they just can't come out and say, we want to control the air you breathe. We want to get paid every time you take a breath in or out. If they would have approached it like that, they'd have been laughed at and laughed out. But instead, they have to bring it up and say carbon emissions, CO2 footprints, carbon emissions. Because, see, that's a perfect way to mask what is truly behind all of this, which is the control of all resources. The government wants to control all of the national resources. When I say the government, remember, there is a fine line between the connected Siamese twins of the government and the corporations. Fortune 500 companies are the government. The government is the Fortune 500 companies. All right. So they stand to get broke the heck off. Now, intelligent investors understand that economic growth is real learning based on falsifiable facts rather than a political fantasy. Now, against the overwhelming power of socialist government, learning is constantly thwarted on purpose. Investors will increasingly tend to look overseas. There, the best opportunities reside in Israel, Taiwan, South Korea, and China. Can you say EEM, ETF? Now, although it is not good news for Americans to be forced to focus much of their investment abroad, Biden's program of national lockdowns, confiscatory taxes, and energy suppression gives us a little alternative. That's right. You got to know who you voted for. He is pro big government. He is a war hawk. He is in the pocket of the military industrial complex. He is all about confiscating your money under the guise of taxes. And yes, he wants to suppress your energy consumption. Oh, of course, don't forget, they always have to put somewhere in the fine print that they give themselves an exit. They say, oh, this doesn't apply to us. It applies to you guys. We have immunity. They always give themselves immunity against the laws that they pass. Always remember that. Now, the upside of a Biden administration is a possible improvement of international trade and technology policy. Now, the only serious blunder of the Trump years was his adoption of mercantilism based on the pursuit of a chimera of a trade surplus. Now, the result was a retrograde effort to use U.S. technology assets to bully China. In international trade and technology policy, Biden offers some promise of improvement. So you got to give him a check mark there. But the Biden downside overseas is a catastrophic failure of his Israel test. Based on a keen grasp of the centrality of Israel and the American prospect, Trump triumphantly passed his Israel test as no other president, moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem and supporting Israel's outreach to the Arab world beyond the seething Palestinians. Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Israel and the U.S. have been tied at the hip for some time now, and everything that they do overseas is not on the up and up. You need to understand that. Now, Kamala Harris' eagerness to re-enter the Paris Climate Accord is exceeded only by her passion for the cause of a Palestinian state and its renewed peace process that is devoted to the destruction of Israel. Now, I have to say that is a stretch because they're speaking of Palestine in the singular instead of the plural. All right, the nation of Palestine is not one person. The nation of Palestine is split right down the middle between Muslim and Christian, and you have a lot of expats there too. It's not just one nation that says, hey, let's destroy Israel. According to Israel, everybody wants to destroy Israel. But you got to ask yourself a question. I wonder why that is. Is that because of the banking bloodline that comes out of Israel that has been responsible for just about every war that the nations have faced? Nah, it couldn't be that. Couldn't be that. How about the pursuit of peace by negotiating with jihadists always produces war in the Middle East? That is not the truth. The truth of the matter is that U.S. meddling always produces war in the Middle East. How about central banksters always produce wars in the Middle East? How about that? You're not supposed to talk about that. You're not supposed to say that. But people believe that opportunity is out there. In this maelstrom, the smart investor will keep his eye on new technologies that are not dependent on political subsidies and guarantees. Investors should spurn academic minds all sickled by a pale cast of green goo. In the United States, real opportunities will often be in private companies, still below the radar, and on their way to transforming our current moment of madness into a national revival. As economists Gail Pooley and Martin Tupy said, this era continues to bring massive technological process. The last 20 years have seen an accelerating decline in the cost of nearly all goods and services measured in the hours of work needed to purchase them. Time and price tells us that opportunities continue to expand. They're just hidden behind the noise of politics and fashion, which is why you need the PulseWave price reports, because I got to tell you, man, them PulseWave reports be on the one. That's why you don't need to be playing yourself. You need to get on and get into the game because they're trying to rig it against you, which is very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate, but that is where we are. That is where we find ourselves. So you got to do your due diligence. You got to do the knowledge to stuff and put yourself in a situation where you're not going, to suffer, because right now people are suffering. And do they care that the people are suffering? Nah, not really. Not really. Not really. Not at all. They don't care. They don't care about us. They only care about them. So just remember that. All right, you guys, I hope everyone has a great weekend. You know what it is, PulseWaveTrading.com. And remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. And I'm out. Peace.